We open with a monologue of a man saying the confined Quincy King will regain his pulse after 900 years, his mind after 90 years, and his strength after 9 years. In the Department of Research and Development, the Sorapers are being notified of an alarming amount of hollows disappearing from the world of the living. We cut to Katakura Town to briefly see someone using what seems to be hollow bait as low-ranking Sorapers are dropped off to help protect the town. And boy oh boy, the new animation sure is pretty. Even the hollows look shiny and new. And speaking of hollows, the two Sorapers get attacked by some and are nearly killed when the gang shows up. Chad, Uryu, Orihime, and of course Ichigo. Not gonna lie, it was pretty hype. The music, the animation, and Ichigo using that new Bankai which gives off a yellow aura now, and his Getsuga Tenchos are black and white. Not sure what's going on with the colors, but it all looks great anyway. The gang saves the Soul Reapers and takes them back to Ichigo's house. Ichigo and the gang are chilling in his room 2 days later having small talk when a strange man shows up. He introduces himself as Ebern, but Ichigo doesn't give a damn and kicks him out the window. It's good to see some things never change. I do like how the rest of the gang aren't worried at all about Ichigo fighting this guy alone because of how powerful Ichigo is. And brother, let me tell you, full-bring Ichigo is no joke. He's even more powerful than I thought he was. Ebern pulls out a Quincy cross and summons some giant cannons. While all that's happening, Yamamoto gets visited by Quincy. They're here to declare war, and as they do, Chojuro comes flying into the room with a giant arrow in his body. The Quincy tells Yama that in 5 days the Soul Society will be destroyed by the Wandering Reich. Yama tries to stop them from leaving, but they vanish into the shadows. As Chojuro is dying, he tells Yama that the enemy can seal away Bankai. Back in the world of the living, Ebern gets Ichigo to use his Bankai, then pulls out this medallion that starts consuming it. But Ichigo powers through and uses Getsuga Tencho.
Now you're talking about my Bankai disappearing? Man, in the last 5 minutes, I've come up with a ton of questions I want to ask you. You are so coming with me.
Oh, really? Ichigo has questions about the strange things he sees and hears. Well, well, well. We're a long way from the Fullbring arc, aren't we? Ebern vanishes into the shadows before Ichigo can get any answers, and here we are introduced to our new big bad. And boy, is he big and bad. So big and bad that he casually dismembers and kills his own men. That's how you know a character means business. Now apparently, our new antagonist here, Yhwach, wants the Soul Society and the world of the living to collapse, and that's why the Quincy's have recently started exterminating hollows at such a rapid pace. We also see that Yhwach has Holybell as a prisoner, which really surprised me because I thought she was dead. The next morning, Nell and Pesce find Ichigo to tell him about the happenings of Hueco Mundo. They tell him that Holybell was trying to restore order when the Quincy showed up and started killing people. Ichigo agrees to go investigate, but Uryu stays behind because he doesn't want to help hollows. And would you look who it is, everyone? It's Kisuke Urahara, sitting on Ichigo's window ready to prepare transport to Hueco Mundo. For the first time ever, Kisuke is actually going with Ichigo and his friends on one of their adventures. Once they arrive in Hueco Mundo, they see firsthand the destruction the Quincy have caused. There's dead bodies everywhere. Out in the distance, a man named Quilljay is transporting a group of Varankar when he gets attacked by Holybell's Fractionis, who I'm also surprised to see are still alive. Ichigo takes his sweet ass time getting to the battlefield, and when he finally arrives, only one man is left standing. Quilljay says he knows Ichigo, and that he's been labeled as a special threat whose elimination is a top priority. He uses something called Volstern Dish, and explains it to Ichigo through some really clunky exposition.
No, it's entirely different. The Quincy Let's-Stile you're thinking of is a hopelessly obsolete relic of the distant past that was abandoned more than 200 years ago due to its fragile and unstable nature. The only one foolish enough to continue using it was Soken Ishida, who rejected the whole idea of research and evolution. To compare that old relic with Quincy Volstern Dish is like comparing night and day.
This exposition was so bad that Ichigo actually tries to decapitate Quilljay right after he hears it. Back in the human world, Uryu is trying to find more information on what's going on. He tells his father that it seems Quincy have invaded Hueco Mundo and have attacked the Serite, and Ryukin actually says none of this concerns Uryu, which is odd because the Quincy are a threat to pretty much the entire Bleach universe. I have no idea why Ryukin would want to keep what he knows about the Quincy secret, but thankfully Uryu isn't a dumbass like his father, so he just continues searching for information. Over in the Serite, Yamamoto and Mayuri are discussing some very interesting matters. Mayuri ordered his squad to expunge 28,000 Retcon residents to counteract the Quincy's mass hollow killings. And this brings up something very interesting that I've somehow never thought about until now. Way back in early Bleach, Rukia tells Ichigo that the number of souls in the Soul Society and the human world are to be maintained at somewhat similar levels, and if one becomes much larger than the other, then the balance would be upset and cause the end of both worlds. The Soul Reaper's job is to balance the number of souls between the human world and the Soul Society. And a soul could only go to the Soul Society if they didn't commit awful crimes while they were living, otherwise they go to hell. And of course, we also know if a soul lingers too long in the human world, they become a hollow and must be cleansed. Which leaves a very important question. What is Hueco Mundo? There's countless hollows there, but why and how? If hollows are souls that have lingered on Earth too long and require cleansing with a Zangetsu toe, then how did they get to Hueco Mundo? Why would they go to Hueco Mundo? I didn't realize till now, but Hueco Mundo's place in the Bleach cosmology doesn't really make much sense.
Utter nonsense. From the moment that the Quincy known as Uryu Ishida infiltrated the Soul Society as a Ryoka, I foresaw that something like this would happen and advised you accordingly. Remember? It was you who chose to heedlessly disregard my warning. Oh, and let us not forget the fact that everything that is happening now is happening because you, Head Captain, couldn't kill that man 1,000 years ago. It was you who brought this upon us.
Okay, there's a lot to dissect here. One, how in the hell did Uryu invading the Soul Society with Ichigo lead to Mayuri believing a bunch of other insanely more powerful Quincy would show up years later to destroy everything? And two, what possible advice could Mayuri have given Yamamoto that would have stopped or changed any of this? And three, why couldn't Yama kill Yhwach? Are we going to find out that Ichigo, Yama, and Aizen were all just cannon fodder, and it's Yhwach who's truly the strongest character in Bleach? Maybe, but until then we got a full-on invasion to deal with. At the end of episode 3, the Stern Ritter appear in the Serite. There's 16 Stern Ritter confirmed, and within 7 minutes, they've claimed the lives of over 1,000 Soul Reapers. Most of this action takes place between episode 3 and 4, so we don't see most of the killing, nor do we get to see most of the captain's fights with the Stern Ritter. The most prominent fight was Byakuya and Renji fighting this guy named Asnot. After a very brief tussle, and I mean very brief, Byakuya comes to the conclusion that he has to use his Bankai. He says that Bankai is the only way for them to win, even though he thinks the Quincy can seal them away. Now, you, my dear viewer, might not know this, but Soul Reapers aren't just capable of fighting with their Zanpakuto and using Shikai and Bankai. They can also use magic. Some Soul Reapers have access to a wide variety of spells that can hurt, heal, protect, reinforce, restrict, entrap, and empower people. Not everyone is proficient at it, of course, but they should all know some type of Kido, with the only exception being Byakuya. Even someone like Renji, who sucks at Kido, was able to use his wits to make it effective. Captain Byakuya, on the other hand, is one of the few characters in Bleach who has displayed extreme proficiency and efficiency in both Kido and Shunpo. He's able to casually cast spells all the way up to the 80s level, and he's even learned unique techniques from Yoruichi herself.
Farewell, nameless Soul Reaper Captain. Your defeat was caused by the arrogant act of not stating your name.
So be it. Stealth Ho-Ho, Shiho number 3. Utsusemi. I wish I didn't have to use a technique I learned from her.
This man has a pretty vast arsenal, but uses his Bankai after like 3 minutes of fighting Asnot. And around the same time, Toshiro, Suifon, and Sajin use theirs as well. They all find out that the Quincy aren't sealing Bankai, but stealing them. This particular part of the Blood War feels really rushed and makes these 4 captains look like complete clowns, especially Suifon. What in the fuck was she thinking using that ridiculous Bankai? She's the captain of Squad 2 and the head of the Stealth Force, or as I like to call it, the Ninja Assassin Division. She has access to even more abilities like Speed Clones and Shunko, something Yoruichi herself uses exclusively over her Zanpakuto. She can even summon a bunch of ninjas from her own division to fight for her. But we never see any of this. The Quincy are powerful and Blute Vein is tricky, but honestly, it's the plot that really fucked up the captains. And as for Yamamoto, he's in his office just watching everyone get slaughtered. So yeah, everything's going to shit. The Department of Research and Development decided to call Ichigo for help. He's still fighting Quillj, but when he makes a comment about him being afraid of Bankai, it distracts Quillj and allows Kisuke to shoot him with what I'm assuming is Kido. Kisuke then opens the Garganta for Ichigo to go help the Soul Reapers, but Ichigo is unable to make it all the way through because Quillj shoots arrows through Chad and Orihime into Kisuke and all the way through the Garganta, closing the exit for Ichigo. Now these are 2 things that really bug me in Bleach, more so in the Blood War than in any other arc, and that's fake out deaths and characters not going for the obvious kill, especially in a universe where people survive the most ridiculous injuries. Why didn't Kisuke just shoot Quillj in the face? And if Cour was still alive, why didn't Kisuke sense it? It's one of his abilities.
Well, I was under the impression that they were dead, but I guess my instincts are starting to fail me.
Stop all this monkey business right now. There's absolutely no way that captains such as us could fail to instantly tell whether an opponent's spirit has ceased to exist.
For God's sakes, tighten up, Kisuke. If that guy had aimed a little higher and shot you in the back of the head, you'd probably be dead. Same with Chad and Orihime. Quilljay unironically could have killed all of you and put a huge dent in this war. After he closes the exit, he shoots another arrow at Ichigo, which Ichigo doesn't react to for some reason, and it traps him in the Quincy cage. Quilljay was about to get off scot-free, but someone cuts him in half and kills him for good this time. Hopefully. Ichigo is now stuck in the Garganta, in this Quincy cage, but surely this isn't going to be a problem. With how powerful Ichigo is, he must be able to break out of this, right? No. No, he can't. He tries his best and fires off some Getsuga Tensho, but the cell won't budge. It was made clear that Bankai Ichigo was more powerful than Quilljay, so much so that even Boot Vein couldn't properly protect him. But all of a sudden, he has power that can trap Ichigo indefinitely? A bit iffy, but okay. Maybe Ichigo just needs a little more juice. So let's do it. Time to holify. Put on your mask, Ichigo. Come on. Come on. Come on. Everyone's dying. No? Okay, well, while Ichigo desperately tries to remember how to use holification, let's head back to the Serite. Everyone is still getting wrecked. Again, not just by the Quincy, but by the plot. Byakuya wasn't really one of my favorite captains, but he went out sad. With just Shikai, he was doing pretty fine. He wasn't winning, but he certainly wasn't losing either. Using his Bankai was completely unnecessary, and after he loses it, he gets obliterated. Asnot was suddenly able to tag him with his fear ability, which pretty much spelled the end for Byakuya. It was a damn shame. And I really don't like this weird idea that the captains are practically useless in battle without Bankai. The Zanpakuto itself only accounts for 1 out of the 4 basic combat methods Soul Reapers have access to. But we don't see any use of Hakudo, Ho-Ho, or Kido. They just get humiliated, not just by the Stern Ritter, but by Kubo. He did a huge disservice to the captains, especially Byakuya. If Kubo wanted to kill him off, you'd think it'd give him a good death, but the way he's handled Byakuya is almost disrespectful, like he just wanted to get him out of the way. Anyway, we cut to Shuhei, who's getting beat up by a Stern Ritter named Driscoll, when Yamamoto finally decides to help out. I guess he was done feeling sad and watching literally hundreds upon hundreds of Soul Reapers get killed. This guy, Driscoll, says it's his lucky day because he was looking for the head captain, but it's also Yama's lucky day because Driscoll was the one who killed his lieutenant. He uses the Bankai he stole from Chojiro, and Yama rages out and burns him to ashes. Yamamoto is now revving in full throttle. He flies directly over to Yhwach, who's holding an unconscious Kenpachi by the neck. Just as Yama saves Kenpachi, Asnot and 2 other Stern Ritter try to jump him, and without any hesitation, Yama fucking torches them. Yamamoto and Yhwach then get into it, and let me just say again, the animation is beautiful. Yama wanted Yhwach to draw his sword so he can use his Bankai. He wants to destroy this Yhwach Bak completely. His flesh, blood, soul, and sword. I know a lot of people love this fight, and it is really exciting and cool, but it's also a bit of a mess. 2 major problems here. The first is why in the hell would Yama use Bankai when he knows the Quincy can steal it from him? I know Yama is very angry and he wants to completely destroy Yhwach, but he barely even tries without Bankai. According to Yamamoto, Yamamoto is the strongest Soul Reaper in the Gote, been so for 1,000 years. And based on age alone, no one's experience or knowledge should come close to his. If there was anyone you could safely assume was a master at all forms of Soul Reaper combat, it would be Yamamoto. Let me remind you that back when Wonder Whis took his Zanpakuto, Yama's first response was to fight with his bare hands. He literally rushed Aizen to punch him in the face. Even before his Shikai was sealed, he never even considered Bankai. But here in the Blood War, Yama can barely wait to use it. The second major problem here is the Bankai itself, Zanka no Tachi. I was expecting Kubo to account for Yama not using Bankai against Aizen in Fate Karakura Town, but he doesn't. At all. In fact, everything about this Bankai makes me wonder why he didn't use it. Back in episode 294, Yamamoto had prepared a technique to destroy Aizen, and everything else in Fate Karakura Town. It wasn't something he could use recklessly because of Aizen's hypnosis, but luckily for Yama, Aizen is a moron. He attacked Yama without the cover of hypnosis, and when he gets caught, we see for the first and only time, Yama's 2,000-year-old smile. He grabs hold of Aizen's arm and tells Ichigo to run because he's going to kill Aizen, himself, and every other captain and Soul Reaper in the vicinity. But after seeing Yama's Bankai against Yhwach, this encounter with Aizen in Fate Katakuri Town is mostly ruined, and Yama just took a huge intelligence hit to his character. He was going to blow everyone up when he could have just used his Bankai to kill only Aizen. As a matter of fact, based on how Yama's Bankai works, if Aizen was that close to him with Kyoka in his body, Zanka no Tachi might have actually destroyed Aizen and his Zanpakuto upon activation. I did still enjoy the spectacle of the Yamamoto versus Yhwach fight. It was pretty hype and beautiful in both the animation and soundtrack department. Again, I really don't like how Yama threw caution to the wind and used his Bankai, and I really don't like Yama stopping his attacks to explain to Yhwach what his Bankai abilities are.
There! I have told you about my Zanka no Tachi East. But where there's an east, there is also a west. Zanka no Tachi West! Sunjitsu Gokui! It burns at a temperature of 15 million degrees Celsius. You can no longer touch me or even get close to me. When I use my Bankai, think of my body and my blade as having been enveloped by the sun!
I guess it doesn't matter how pretty it is on the surface, Kubo's writing will always be Kubo's writing. Yama rushes towards Yhwach again, but with no weapon in hand, Yhwach uses his ultimate defensive technique.
Sanct Slinger!
This is a Quincy's ultimate defensive incantation, combining offense with defense. Step through it, and you will be torn apart by God's light!
Look, you probably don't need my advice, but perhaps next time, keep your mouth shut and just let Yama come into the light and get killed. Yamamoto says that if he doesn't end things soon, Zanka no Tachi is going to destroy him and the Soul Society, which was surprising to hear because of how nonchalant he is. He constantly stops his assault to talk to Yhwach, and after he uses South, he just turns and casually walks away in his Bankai. He intended to just wait for Yhwach to push past his old subordinates to continue the fight, and once he does, Yama uses Zanka no Tachi South to finally end it. Shortly after all that, we get our first big plot twist. It turns out, Yama was fighting a Stern Ritter who could copy Yhwach's appearance and memories, while the real Yhwach spoke with Aizen in the central underground prison. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this is probably one of my favorite scenes in all of Bleach. This was it right here. This was the real hype for me. The two dumbest characters meeting for the first time. I immediately thought to myself, who's gonna win? Who's gonna come out on top? Who's dumber, Aizen or Yhwach? It's a short scene, but my god was it worth it. And I do have to give the victory to Yhwach by default. Let me explain. Yhwach went to see Aizen because he wanted Aizen to join the Quincy and help him kill Soul Reapers and destroy the Serite. Now let's stop right here. Yhwach and his Quincy on their own are so powerful they can just show up to the Serite on any given day and shit on everyone. And it should also be noted that Yhwach only came here with a handful of Stern Ritter. This isn't his full army. This invasion didn't even include his royal guard, and Yhwach himself didn't take part in the fighting. So why does he need or even want Aizen?
Didn't you come here because you see my power as a threat to you?
I do, but since you're fused with the Hogyoku, I know it would take too much time to kill you or neutralize you.
God, I can't get enough of this low IQ. If Aizen is a threat to Yhwach, why on earth would Yhwach want Aizen to join him? Yhwach has power over all the Quincy, every single one of them. So why in the hell does he want Aizen to be anywhere near him? Someone who he has no power over and who can betray him at any time. I know it sounds like Yhwach should have taken the L in this interaction, but I gotta give it to Aizen because he refuses Yhwach's offer. If Aizen had accepted, he probably would have been freed right there on the spot and could have done whatever he wanted after. Run away, attack Yhwach, help kill Soul Reapers, or just troll captains by talking shit to them. The world would have been his oyster. But no, he wants to stay in his prison with nothing to do, nothing to see, and no one to talk to. So Yhwach just leaves and goes to see Yama. Yamamoto, after realizing all this, immediately goes for his Bankai again, but Yhwach steals it. Apparently, Yamamoto thought the Quincy needed some sort of understanding of a Bankai to steal it. Now I have no idea who told this to Yama, or what in the world could have led him to believe such a thing, but Yhwach says only he is powerful enough to handle Zanka no Tachi. And after he steals it, he summons his sword and one-shots Yamamoto. And even though it looks like Yama just gave up and stood there, I'm going to assume Yhwach just struck him down really fast and he couldn't react because Yamamoto giving up makes no sense to me. At the start of the next episode, we see two flashbacks. One in which we're shown a bit of the Quincy invasion of the Soul Society 1,000 years prior, and the other is of Shunsui and Yama talking about a painting on the wall.
It is a painting of a monster that showed up in the Soul Society a long time ago.
Huh?
We were already facing a threat to our very existence, and that monster only made things worse.
Why do you think you made things worse, Yama? Those Quincy bastards were gonna uproot the universe and you saved everyone. Even though you killed a bunch of your own guys, everyone owes their lives to you, and the world's balance has been in order for 1,000 years because of you. Honestly, you should be proud. You held things together for longer than most characters have even been alive, but I suppose all good things must come to an end. Now in the present, Yamamoto has been defeated, cut in half at the feet of the Quincy King. As Yhwach is about to walk away, Yama grabs a hold of him, even though he's basically dead, and Yhwach actually shits on him for it. Like, brother, you cut a man down and out of pure grit and instinct, he still tries to fight and stop you? That seems pretty hardcore and badass to me, but Yhwach calls him soft-hearted and pathetic. He talks about how Yama became weak because he developed a sense of justice and found people he wanted to protect and love. But that doesn't add up. What he's saying seems backwards. If Yama in the past didn't give a shit about anyone or anything, wouldn't he fight even harder now to protect the people and things he cares about? Sure, he doesn't want to accidentally destroy those people himself, but that should only make Yama more dangerous if he was focused on eliminating the enemy quickly with a high level of precision and efficiency. I get what Yhwach is trying to say, or, well, I get half of what he's trying to say, but is he aware of what happened? Yamamoto didn't hold anything back against the fake Yhwach. He used every single one of his Bankai abilities, and despite it being dangerous for the Soul Society, he wasn't in much of a rush to end the fight either. It wasn't that Yama was soft or weak or too forgiving or anything like that. He was just dumb, plain and simple. He probably could have beaten the fake Yhwach without Bankai, but even when he used his Bankai, he chose not to stay on the attack. He kept talking to the fake Yhwach and explaining his powers, even though, again, this Bankai is said to be super dangerous for everyone and everything. Anyway, after Yhwach is done monologuing, he blows up the two halves of Yamamoto's body. Yama's death shocks all the captains and distracts Shunsui, which gives the Stern Reader he was fighting an opportunity to shoot him down. The Quincy continue their slaughter of the Soul Reapers when Akon finally breaks Ichigo free. He rushes over to Byakuya, but it's too late. Byakuya is just about done. Asnot tore him to shreds. It's a very touching scene, but it does feel a bit empty, not just because of the way Byakuya was defeated, but because Orihime should be able to reverse all this and bring him back to life if he does die. Byakuya's final words to Ichigo was to protect the Soul Society, and after hearing this, Ichigo is ready to rumble. He immediately pinpoints Yhwach and confronts him. He asks if he's the one who's destroyed the Serite, and when Yhwach confirms, Ichigo goes fucking ballistic. Now, despite Ichigo being in a weakened state and without a holification, he still seems to be more powerful than Yamamoto. I know Yama and the real Yhwach never really got to fight, but if Yama could combat the real Yhwach like this, why didn't he? At the very sight of Ichigo's power, Yhwach concludes the only way out is for Ichigo to die. They clash for a while, and Yhwach momentarily bests Ichigo when something magical happens. Ichigo activates Blute Vein. Yhwach is shocked to see that Ichigo has Quincy powers, and so am I. He beats Ichigo down again, and just when he's about to kill him, some shadows appear. He's run out of time, and can no longer stay in the Soul Society. Yhwach says Aizen screwed with his sense of time when he went to speak with him, and Hashwell knew, but wait a minute, if Yhwach went to get Aizen to join him, and was gone longer than he should have been, why didn't Hashwell go check on him? And Aizen, buddy, if you wanted to have some fun with us in the free world, you should have just told Yhwach to bust you out. What's the point of screwing with his senses when you refused his offer? Anyway, instead of just killing Ichigo, Yhwach leaves with the other Quincy. Ichigo tries to attack him before he goes, but Hashwell draws his sword and breaks Tensa's Zangetsu. This entire closing interaction between Ichigo and Yhwach was very confusing to me, and I'm beginning to think Kubo himself is also confused. Yhwach decides he's gonna kill Ichigo when they first meet, but then he pins him down for a bit and decides he wants to capture him instead. Then he goes back to trying to kill Ichigo again and says he's gonna stab him so hard Blute Vein won't be able to save him. But then he just decides to not kill him in the end because reasons. This scene was like a mixture of ADHD and autism. For some reason, Yhwach can't decide whether or not he wants to kill Ichigo, which is weird because he's the one who listed Ichigo as this big threat who needs to die in the first place.
If ever you hear this, my words.
What a complete mess. I'm having a little trouble deciding which is worse. The damage the Serite sustained, or the plot surrounding the Quincy invasion. Let's back up a little, shall we? Yhwach wants two things: to kill the Soul Reapers and cause an imbalance in the world, essentially ending it. So how does he go about doing this? Well, first he tries to upset the balance by eliminating hollows in mass droves, both in the human world and Hueco Mundo. Then he sets out to invade the Soul Society, but not before sending someone to lure hollows to Karakura Town and someone else to warn Yamamoto. For some reason, he sends foot soldiers to tell Yama the Quincy are back. But for what purpose? What was the point of killing hollows and recruiting hollows in Hueco Mundo? Why did he want Hueco Mundo? What was the point of Driscoll attacking the Cerite before the first invasion? And what was the point of sending Eburn to fight Ichigo? If Yhwach listed Ichigo as a special threat whose elimination was a top priority, why didn't he just send a few powerful Quincy to kill him, then start the invasion immediately after they engaged in battle? That way both Ichigo and all the Cerite would be caught completely off guard by the Quincy's sudden appearance, and wouldn't have the slightest clue that they shouldn't use Bankai. Matter of fact, since Ichigo is in a town with Isshin, Kisuke, Yoruichi, and a bunch of other powerful people, Yhwach should have just sent the same team he later takes to the Soul King Palace to Karakura Town to kill Ichigo and anyone who decides to help him, then invade the Soul Society with the other Quincy. Also, the whole Aizen thing is completely senseless. Forget Aizen and instead, just fight with the rest of the Quincy to kill all the Soul Reapers. I don't even know why Yhwach would even want to talk to Aizen before he's dealt with Yamamoto and the other captains. I know killing the Soul Reapers and destroying the world seems like a tough task, but everything, and I mean literally everything, is in Yhwach's favor. He's leading an army of Quincy that can all steal Bankai, and even if they couldn't use Bankai plundering, the Stern Ritter are already strong enough to combat the Soul Reapers on their own. On top of that, Yhwach had an insane surprise factor that he just threw away, and the Stern Ritter outnumbered the squad captains by like 2-1. Yhwach could have legitimately won this whole war with the first attack. He could have gotten rid of all the Soul Reapers in a single blow and then caused the imbalance by killing hollows after. But no. He goes on a rampage killing a bunch of hollows, which alerts the Soul Reapers. He tells Yama about the Quincy's return, then has someone steal a Bankai and allows the Cerite to prepare for war. Sure, he still got 5 Bankais in the invasion, but that's just because those 5 captains were dumb. Yhwach had all the time in the world to plan, and this was the best he could come up with. A series of nonsensical, pointless, and redundant actions. This guy might be the biggest clown in Bleach yet. So, what's the aftermath of this pathetic invasion and awful plan? Well, there's plenty of dead Soul Reapers, 5 Bankais were stolen, and Yamamoto is dead. It does seem like a huge loss for the Cerite, right? Well, here's the thing. After the invasion, there's a captain's meeting where we find out that Shunsui, Byakuya, Toshiro, Suifon, and Sajin are all still alive. And while losing Yamamoto and all those other Soul Reapers will be a hard thing to get past, there is a huge silver lining here. And it's that the Quincy invasion only brought about the death of a single captain. Every other captain, with the exception of Byakuya, is pretty much fine. Don't get me wrong, the invasion was tough on everyone, but as far as the war goes, most of the Soul Reapers' heavy hitters are still alive. Now, no disrespect to the people who lost their lives, but they were mostly insignificant power level wise. As a matter of fact, excluding Yamamoto, they were all insignificant. The Stern Ritter literally killed no one outside of a bunch of no-name and faceless jobbers. I honestly don't even know how that's even possible. Suifon, Toshiro, and Sajin all got their Bankai taken away by Stern Ritter that were already stronger than them, but somehow they survived without their Zanbakuto spirit and didn't get killed. How? Did the Stern Ritter just choose to let them live? If so, why? Yamamoto should have been one of 6 significant deaths in the first invasion. Byakuya, Shunsui, Toshiro, Sajin, and Suifon should all be dead. Shit, even Rukia should probably be dead. The first invasion on the surface looks much worse than it actually is. The captains now know quite a bit about the Quincy they'll be fighting and can prepare even better now. Yes, 5 Bankais were stolen, one of which was Zanka no Tachi, but they're all still alive. They'll all get stronger from the beating they took. Not to mention, there's a bunch of other captain level Soul Reapers they can call for help. When you really think about it, the Stern Ritters are complete ass. The only real work was done by Yhwach himself, and he did it after he already lost 7 Stern Ritter. Sure, the fake Yhwach did beat Kenpachi, but it was too little too late. He wasn't able to kill him. Kenpachi will just recover, get stronger, and join back the fight. They all will. Asnot somehow didn't kill Byakuya, Bambi didn't kill Sajin, BG9 didn't kill Suifon, Changdu didn't kill Toshiro, Robert shot Shunsui twice in the chest and once in the head and still left him alive, and somehow Meninas didn't kill Rukia. It's as if Yhwach literally told the Stern Ritter to kill everyone except characters with names and the least bit of history to the audience. Quilljay goes on and on about how His Majesty says that Ichigo is a special threat and that killing him is really important, but when faced with the opportunity to kill both Ichigo and Kenpachi, Yhwach and Hashwell just let them go. Haschwalth is the Stern Ritter Grand Master, but he doesn't do anything. He kills a bunch of inconsequential nobodies, then joins up with fake Yhwach and stands around as he fights Kenpachi, then Yamamoto. This initial attack was actually worse for the Stern Ritter than it was for the captains. And to be honest, the first invasion and the events leading up to it has some of the worst writing I've ever seen in Bleach. But enough about how trash Yhwach and the Stern Ritter are. Let's get back to Ichigo. Mayuri tells him a Zanpakuto that gets broken while in Bankai can never be repaired. But fortunately for Ichigo, Zangetsu wasn't a real Zanpakuto. I'll be saving Ichigo and his Zanpakuto spirits for later. For now, we get a visit from the Zero Division. A division made up entirely of captains, 5 to be exact, and their combined power surpasses that of the entire Gotei 13.
Where have they been all this time?
In the royal palace. Remember how those walls fell out of the sky when you first came here? Those walls have remained down, forming a barrier around this area ever since you and your friends got here. The walls were only ever intended to surround the Seirete during emergencies. Why is it then they're still down here instead of where they should be, up in the sky protecting the royal palace?
So the Soul King Palace is above the Seirete? Okay, how was Aizen able to control walls that come from the Soul King Palace? And how did Yamamoto not know the palace was right above him the entire time?
The royal palace is located in a completely separate dimension and is guarded by its own private force.
I guess I'll just add it to the list of retcons. And speaking of retcons, if the Zero Division is more powerful than the entire 13 Court Guard squads put together, why did Aizen think Yamamoto was the strongest Soul Reaper? Yhwach was able to kill Yamamoto with a single swing of his sword, and he later gets smothered by Ichibei. And a very important key detail that no one ever brings up is that by the time Yhwach entered the Soul King Palace and fights Ichibei, he should have been significantly more powerful than when he killed Yamamoto. I know that might come as a surprise to some of you guys, but it is stated by Haschwalth that all the Stern Ritter who were given a script by Yhwach will have their powers, knowledge, and skills absorbed by him when they die. And Ichibei was able to handle this much more powerful Yhwach by himself. I'm not saying Yhwach wasn't a threat to Ichibei when they fought, but it's pretty clear that Ichibei was the superior. I don't think Ichibei even needed his Shikai and Bankai to defeat Yhwach, but we'll get to the rest of that later. The point is, Ichibei with Ichimonji should be way beyond Yamamoto with Ryujin Jaka. Squad 0 says they were ordered by the Soul King to bring Rukia, Ichigo, Renji, and Byakuya back up with them. Apparently their injuries are beyond Unohana's capabilities, so if one is reasonably upset by all this but gets ignored then told to shut the fuck up.
Right, well, anyway, as I was saying, orders are...
Shut up, will ya? The only joke around here is you. The 13 Court Guard squads. Remind me what your job even is. I know our job's to protect the Royal Palace. I always thought your job was to protect the Seirete. What kind of Court Guard goes crying for help after failing at the one job they've got?
Damn, I sure hope you never fail your job, buddy. Kisuke then drops in with a broadcast that pretty much only happens to tell us that Grimmjow is still alive. And I definitely wasn't expecting him to still be around, but at this point, I'm just gonna assume that Yami, Noritoro, Zalaporo, and anyone else we didn't see blow up or fade away is still alive. The Zero Division tells Ichigo they can't fix his sword, but they can reforge it into something that resembles his original sword. So Ichigo agrees and goes to the Soul King Palace with them. The only way back up is through Kukakushiba's flower cannon. I honestly still can't believe the Royal Palace is just up in the sky. Oh my god. Is that execution? How the fuck did Ginjo get into the Soul Society? He should have gone to hell. Homie was literally going around manipulating, robbing, and murdering Soul Reapers. He's practically a serial killer, but he gets free passage into the Soul Society? Okay. Ichigo gets up to the Soul King Palace, but there's something on his mind.
Hey, wait a minute. Am I missing something? I thought you couldn't get into the Royal Palace without the Oken.
It's here. Our bones are the Oken. That's right. They were transformed by the power of the Soul King when we were selected by him to join Squad 0. You see, there are only 2 ways to gain entrance to the Royal Palace. Either we choose to allow you in, or you come in with us. Sosuke Aizen was trying to make an imitation Oken of his own.
In other words, he was trying to use his own spiritual powers to create clones of us.
What? Aizen was gonna create Squad Zero clones? You know, the Blood War adds things that recontextualize the old anime that can sometimes be kinda hard to believe. Sometimes too hard to believe. The Soul King Palace not being in another dimension but just up in the sky behind some barriers, and Aizen thinking Yama's Ryujin Jaka is the most powerful Zanpakuto when, narratively speaking, he's supposed to know about the Zero Division. It all just feels off. I don't know how best to describe it, but so much of this feels like random stuff Kubo's pulling out of a hat. It doesn't flow well, if that makes sense. And what bothers me even more are characters' reactions in these situations. How can Ichigo hear something like this and just let it pass him by? Since when can a character use their own raw power to make copies of other people? What was all that stuff about Karakura-town and the 100,000 souls needed to make a key if Aizen was just going to make Squad Zero with his own power? As much as I don't normally like retcons, I can sometimes understand why they're done. But in Bleach, they often don't have any rhyme or reason behind them. I'm inclined to believe that most retcons in Bleach weren't even intentional. They were just mistakes that Kubo made and never thought about. Yamamoto told us the Oken, a key which opens the gate to the Soul King dimension, couldn't be found by Aizen because the location was only known to him and the prior head captains of the Gote 13. There was nothing wrong with that. Nothing needed to be changed, but it was. The Oken is not a key, it's the skeleton of each member of the Zero Division. The Soul King Palace isn't hidden away in some secret dimension, it's just above the Serite. And there is no passing down information between head captains because Yamamoto was the only head captain, ever. There was no one before him. These are just retcons for retcon's sake. They bring nothing positive or beneficial to the story. They only hinder and hurt it. I have no idea why anyone thought these were necessary changes. Anyway, this lady says Aizen wanted to make himself into a new god by killing the Soul King. I'm not sure how they know this, but seeing as how these guys seem to be of a higher authority, I guess I'll take their word for it. As for Ichigo, there's a few things he has to do. Each member of the Zero Division has their own castle that surrounds the Soul King Palace, and Ichigo is to visit each one in order to recover and reforge his sword. First, he has all the blood and bad spiritual pressure drained out of him and replenished with hot, healthy water. Then he and Renji go to the next castle to eat soul food. The food they eat is infused with spiritual power to make Renji and Ichigo stronger. Huge missed opportunity not bringing some of that food down to the other captains, but oh well. After that, they go to Uetsu Nemaya, the creator of the Zanpakuto, and this guy is super fucking cringe.
What's up? Boom, boom, bappity bap, yeah!
Hey, can you deal with this guy?
Nemaya takes Ichigo and Renji to a dark room where they get attacked by Asauchi. Asauchi are Nemaya's creation. They're Zanpakuto that can become anything. Over time, a soul imprints the essence of their soul onto an Asauchi and it becomes their own personalized Zanpakuto. As for the Asauchi that are attacking Ichigo and Renji, apparently they're angry because of the way they've been disrespecting their Zanpakuto. This immediately drew some red flags for me because Ichigo never received an Asauchi, so how could he have disrespected his Zanpakuto if he never had one? And if Ichigo never had an Asauchi, what exactly is this? What is the sword Ichigo calls Zangetsu and Tensa Zangetsu? Nemaya says that since the dawn of the Soul Society, not a single Soul Reaper has ever awakened their Zanpakuto without an Asauchi, made specifically by him. Not even the other members of the Zero Division. So why did everyone, and I mean literally everyone, refer to Zangetsu as Ichigo's Zanpakuto when he never had an Asauchi? How was Ichigo able to use whatever this is to cleanse hollows and transfer spirits to the Soul Society? And how did he make an actual sword for himself? It annoys the hell out of me that no one ever brings this up and asks about it, not even Ichigo himself. Nemaya claims that he's the blade god and creator of all Zanpakuto when Ichigo made his own. He literally just pulled Zangetsu out of his ass. Let's be honest with ourselves, this is just more retconning. Back in the old anime, no one gave a damn that Ichigo had a Zanpakuto, nor was it treated as something special or unusual when he made one out of thin air. Everyone in the old anime recognized Zangetsu as a Zanpakuto, and with this Zanpakuto, Ichigo was able to do everything the Soul Reapers with real Zanpakuto could do, and he was even more powerful than the vast majority of them. So this is all just more nonsense to me. Especially when you consider that in the first episode when Rukia gave Ichigo her powers, her own Zanpakuto disappears. Just like how Ichigo's Zanpakuto would disappear when he loses the bulk of his powers. It's almost as if Nemaya being the Zanpakuto creator was a last minute retcon made only for the Blood War. But hey, what do I know? Nemaya eventually sends Ichigo home, and once there, Ichigo has a long overdue conversation with his father.
Remember how you once said that I could wait till I felt the time was right to tell you the whole story? I think that time is now.
Bro, You mean to tell me that in the 3 years since Ichigo found out you were a Soul Reaper, you never once talked to him about who you really were, how you were a Shinigami, and what led you to be living in the human world? Are you fucking kidding me? And Ichigo, you mean to tell me that you never asked your father how he was a Soul Reaper, why he had a captain's uniform, and why, since he's clearly very powerful, a low-tier hollow was able to kill your mother? You're joking, right? This is all a joke. You're telling me that after Aizen, you guys just went back to living like nothing ever happened? Really? Even after the Ginjo stuff, you guys still never talked about any of this? Huh. It's like Kubo isn't even trying anymore. Ishin goes on to tell Ichigo that his mother was a Quincy and explains why Ichigo has all these powers. The hollow inside Ichigo is a result of a hollow Aizen was experimenting with that attacked Karakura Town. Ishin tried to stop it but got attacked by Aizen. Masaki, Ichigo's mother, then showed up to help Ishin. She's able to kill the hollow but gets bitten in the process and begins to undergo hollification. The only way to save her was to counteract the hollification with a hybrid of Soul Reaper and human. Ishin was the only one who could save her, and he did. Kisuke gave him a Gigai that would make him human and tied his soul to Masaki and the hollow within her. And this is why Ichigo is the way he is. Hollow, Soul Reaper, Fullbring, and now Quincy.
And over the course of your many battles at the Soul Society, the hollow in you was awakened. The very fact that it was released meant that the spiritual pressure I'd been exerting all these years was no longer capable of suppressing it. And so, the bond tying me to my Gigai and that hollow was broken.
So you knew from way back then that the hollow in Ichigo had essentially broken free and you still didn't give a shit? Nice. Ishin says that just as Masaki was about to fight Grand Fisher, Yhwach used something called Auschweilen that took all her Quincy powers away, and so Grand Fisher was able to kill her. This scene at the end of episode 12 annoyed me for two main reasons. One, if Masaki was such a powerful and skilled Quincy, why didn't she sense Grand Fisher before Ichigo ran over to him? And two, I didn't even realize this on my first watch through, but Ishin knew more about the Quincy than just about anyone else, and just chose to keep it all to himself. He knew about Yhwach, he knew about Auschweilen and what it was used for, and he knew about the Quincy Kaiser Jizang, which basically talks about how and when the Quincy King will return. And Ishin didn't say a word to anyone. So far in the Blood War, Ishin and Ryukin literally have like 10 minutes of screen time combined. And with that little time, Kubo managed to severely damage both characters. They both knew who Yhwach was, they both knew what he was doing, and they both knew how he was doing it. I guess the power of plot compelled them not to say anything. Anyway, now armed with information about how he has the powers he does, Ichigo returns back to Nemaya's castle to face the Yasauchi. This time, they don't attack him. Instead, they all bow, and when Ichigo touches the one furthest in the back, it turns into... Is that supposed to be the hollow in Ichigo? Why does he look like that? What happened to his face? I don't want to nitpick too much, but why'd they change his design? And more importantly, why does he have nothing to say? The hollow in Ichigo was extremely talkative, and was kind of an asshole, but once he gets brought out as a proper Zanpakuto, he's completely silent. It honestly doesn't even seem like Hollow Zangetsu, but whatever. While Ichigo is nearing the end of his journey of self-discovery, the other Soul Reapers are preparing for the Quincy's next invasion. Kenpachi and Unohana have an all-out fight where we find out that Kenny has been subconsciously suppressing himself since he was a kid, and once he breaks free of his own self-made shackles, he kills Unohana and finally hears the voice of his Zanpakuto. Toshiro trains using Zanjutsu, Swift is alone in the mountains training, Sajin goes to see a big dog, and Kensei takes Shuhei to master his Bankai, because he's an idiot.
Shuhei, I want you to master Bankai. Huh? I was lucky my Bankai wasn't stolen this time, but it could very well happen the next. The more Soul Reapers who use Bankai, the better.
Kensei, why do you want more Soul Reapers using Bankai when the enemy can simply steal it from you? Oh my god, bro is really brain dead. It seems no one in the Blood War is escaping Kubo's madness. And speaking of madness, Miyuri's off doing some experimenting in the R&D department. So most of the Serites is trying to get stronger and fortify themselves for the next battle, which is a very good idea, but if it was me, I would take it a step further and put the rest of the Visors, Ishin, Yoruichi, and Tessai all on call to help defend against the Quincy. But back up to the palace with Ichigo. It's finally time for him to reforge his Zanpakuto. And I have a problem with just about everything that happens here. First things first, there is no reforging Tensa Zangetsu. In fact, the actual sword itself holds no significance whatsoever. Nemaya smashed it to pieces and just threw it away. It's basically garbage. Now that Ichigo imprinted onto an Asauchi, Namiya can begin forging a new Zanpakuto. In other words, he's going to make Zangetsu into a Zanpakuto for the first time. Namiya says that Ichigo is going to have to say goodbye to Old Man Zangetsu because the hollow that appeared when he first touched the Asauchi is his real Zanpakuto spirit. The other spirit that Ichigo called Old Man Zangetsu was actually his Quincy powers manifested as Yhwach from 1,000 years ago. Ichigo goes into his inner world and Old Man Zangetsu confirmed everything Namiya said. He's not Zangetsu, he's young Yhwach. Ichigo's inner world begins to crumble as the old man tells him that whenever he was in danger of losing his life or when he couldn't handle his Zanpakuto's power, it was the hollow that helped him. He says he suppressed Ichigo's true power because he never wanted him to be a Soul Reaper. He wanted to keep Ichigo from danger and conflict, and if Ichigo did become a Soul Reaper, he would eventually have to kill him. And all of this, all of it, is retconned bullshit. In order to properly get into this, I need to go way back to the first arc of Bleach, when Ichigo first entered his inner world, episode 19 to be exact. So for a moment, just forget about everything that happens in the Blood War.
The right thing to do.
After Byakuya had destroyed the power that Rukia gave to Ichigo, Kisuke set out to train him so he can save Rukia from being executed. In order to use his own power, Ichigo had to enter his inner world for the first time and meet his Zanpakuto spirit. This is when he also finds out he has Soul Reaper powers of his own. Old Man Zangetsu then guides Ichigo to finding his own Soul Reaper powers, and this scene was the culmination of Ichigo learning the name of his Zanpakuto. Once Ichigo learns Shikai, he trains for a bit more, and later in the Soul Society he learns Bankai. Since time was short, he used a method created by Kisuke that forcibly draws out his Zanpakuto spirit. Old Man Zangetsu then appears and proceeds to help Ichigo achieve Bankai, which would be his Tensa Zangetsu. You following so far? Good. In the Arrancar arc, when Ichigo is training with the Vizards, he enters his inner world again, but Old Man Zangetsu is nowhere to be found. The only one here is this guy, and we'll call him Hollow Zangetsu. Why? Because that's who he says he is.
Well, here's your answer. I am Zangetsu!
Hollow Zangetsu also says something very important here. He explains to Ichigo that Old Man Zangetsu and himself, Hollow Zangetsu, were originally one person, that they shared the same body. But as time went on, a change occurred, a separation, if you will. When Old Man Zangetsu is in control, Hollow Zangetsu becomes a part of him. And when Hollow Zangetsu is in control, the old man becomes a part of him. But don't take it from me, take it from the man himself.
Ichigo, maybe you aren't aware of this, but Zangetsu and I have always been one and the same. Together we're your spirit energy. I used to be part of him. We shared the same body. But as our relationship began to change, so too did our individual appearances. When life is in control, flesh covers the bones. When death takes over, the bones become exposed. It's the same with Zangetsu and I. Over time, my power increased. Control started to switch over to death, and Zangetsu became a part of me.
Now this was a bit confusing at first, but it all came together pretty well when Ichigo did his Dangai training. Towards the end of the Arrancar arc, Ichigo goes into his inner world for the last time to learn the final Getsuga Tensho. Here, Ichigo comes face to face with Hollow Zangetsu and Old Man Zangetsu, both in Bankai. They then merge together, but not in a way we've seen before. One doesn't hold dominance over the other. Instead, there seems to be, for lack of a better term, balance, as if they've returned to their original form. It could be argued, and I definitely would argue, that this was the first time Ichigo ever really fought Zangetsu. In fact, we'll call this true Zangetsu.
This is our true form, Ichigo. We are the same. The two of us are your power.
You see, back in the old anime run of Bleach, this guy, True Zangetsu, was Ichigo's Zanpakuto spirit in its proper form. Old Man Zangetsu was his Shinigami powers, and Hollow Zangetsu was his Hollow powers. We didn't know at the time why Ichigo's Zanpakuto spirit was also a Hollow, but we did know for sure that they were both Zangetsu, and that they were one single person. And that's not metaphorically speaking either, they were literally one person. That's what we see and what we're told by all three of them. Now fast forward to the Blood War, Old Man Zangetsu says he was never Zangetsu at all, and that he didn't want Ichigo to be a Soul Reaper, even though he is the sole reason why Ichigo is a Soul Reaper. He also says that he's the manifestation of the Quincy powers in Ichigo, even though when Ichigo pierced the 10 Shintai that was specifically designed for Zanpakuto manifestation, he came forward and proceeded to train Ichigo for Bankai.
I take it you heard our conversation.
Of course.
Then I'll leave the method of fighting up to you. I assume that you can start right away.
Of course.
He also says that whether he wanted to or not, he would eventually have to kill Ichigo if he did become a Soul Reaper, even though he just changes his mind and decides not to kill Ichigo. Everything pertaining to Ichigo's inner spirits was one big fuck up. Kubo just wanted to give Ichigo Quincy powers but chose the dumbest way to do it. I'm serious. Kubo couldn't have done a worse job with writing in Ichigo's Quincy powers, even if he was paid to do so. And before you try to make the argument that old man Zangetsu simply had the hollow inside him at the time of Ichigo's Bankai training, let me inform you that was also retconned. In the Blood War, it's revealed that hollows are poisonous to Quincy. Extremely poisonous. So even that doesn't even make sense. It's as if the Ichigo in the Blood War and the Ichigo in the original anime are fundamentally different characters power-wise, because Kubo simply changed his mind on how his powers would work. None of this was clever writing or good foreshadowing. It wasn't foreshadowed at all. It's all just retconning and contradictory writing. Both Zangetsus made it very clear to Ichigo on multiple occasions that they were both Zangetsu. More importantly, they even referred to each other as Zangetsu when Ichigo wasn't around. But Kubo later decided to retcon the whole thing, and so many people just ate it up, even going as far as to call it an example of a brilliant piece of foreshadowing in Bleach. I just don't get it. It's as if the fans took the new information in the Blood War, then went back to try and headcanon everything into making sense. Ichigo and Zangetsu already came to terms with one another in the old anime, because back in the old anime, this was the true Zangetsu, a single spirit made up of both hollow and soul reaper power. But now Kubo's telling me that this isn't Zangetsu, and this isn't Zangetsu, because only the hollow is Zangetsu. It's all so sloppy. None of this works. None of it makes a lick of sense. Even at the end when Kubo has Ichigo exposit to us about how Zangetsu never lied, and that he even lent Ichigo Quincy powers to win fights. It's hilarious to me because Zangetsu absolutely lied. They both did. And even Ichigo himself is lying right now about receiving Quincy powers prior to the Blood War. Either that or Yhwach, the Quincy King, was somehow wrong about how Ichigo's Quincy powers were dormant before Quilljay's jail. They both can't be true, so which is it? How do you even screw this up? Everything But the Rain and The Blade Is Me are two of the most important episodes in all of Bleach. How could you make such silly mistakes? It's just too much at this point. I can barely keep track of all these retcons and writing errors anymore. Bleach just contradicts itself over and over again on so many levels, and for no good reason. I don't know how long it's been since Ichigo got his Fullbring powers, but he barely uses that shit. In fact, he doesn't use it at all. Not since the Fullbring arc have I seen a single glimmer of Bringer light. I know these accents on his body are a visual sign of his Fullbring powers being fused with his Soul Reaper powers, but he never uses any of his Bringer abilities, and I doubt he ever will. So why give him Quincy powers? Is he gonna do something with this? Will he be shooting arrows and absorbing Reishi? Cause if not, what's the fucking point of making him a Quincy? It isn't necessary to give him all these different abilities if he's never going to use them, especially if it comes at the cost of the story's consistency. For God's sakes, Ichigo doesn't even holofy anymore, and his hollow powers were a huge staple in Bleach. He used that shit for everything.
I'm impressed by your reaction time. You used your mask to block my Zero.
Am I to assume that this is gonna be different? Is he gonna use Blood Vein again? Maybe even a Volstern dish? Honestly, I don't know. I wouldn't even be surprised if he never uses his Quincy or Fullbring abilities ever again. I would, however, be extremely surprised if he never uses holification again. But with Kubo, you just never know. The final scene is of Yhwach returning to Yhwach with Uryu by his side, now fully dripped out in Stern Ritter gear. And this has got to be the most obvious betrayal setup I've ever seen in my entire life. And while I don't know yet why Yhwach recruited Uryu, I'm pretty confident it will make literally zero sense. Bleach 1000 Year Blood War Cour 2, The Separation, is awful. Worse than Cour 1. Not just in terms of characters and plot, but even the fighting. You know that saying 1 step forward and 2 steps back? Well, Cour 2 didn't make any steps forward. It only went back. We pick up with Ichigo after the whole Zangetsu revelation thing, and he's with Ichibe.
How incredibly pathetic. A 1,000 years of peace have caused the Soul Reapers to become weak.
Oh, for fuck's sakes. What is your problem? The Gote 13 isn't weak. Yhwach and the Quincy are just really, really powerful. Dude, at this point, I'm actually cheering for the Stern Ritter to beat up Squad Zero. There isn't much information about the first war, but we are told that the Gote 13 was stronger back then. The thing is, I'm pretty sure Yhwach is stronger now. The Stern Ritter are stronger now. They're all equipped with Bankai Stealing abilities now, and they all have Volstern Dish now, which is kind of like a Quincy Bankai, which allows them access to even more abilities. So maybe Ichibe and the rest of Squad Zero secretly hate the current Gote, because I'm pretty confident that the Quincy army now wouldn't have lost to the original Gote. Anyway, Ichigo's concerned about everyone else in the Serite and goes to leave, but Ichibe tells him if he goes now, he won't stand a chance against Yhwach. Now, this is one of those things that makes me wonder how aware the characters in universe are of the universe they're in. Because Fullbring Ichigo in Bankai, while severely beaten up and without holification, was able to keep up with Yhwach, and his Blood Vein was strong enough to stop a blade thrust from him. That was a much, much weaker Ichigo. Ichigo now is the most powerful he's ever been, by a colossal margin. And yes, that's including Dangai. Just like the Zero Division is more powerful than the entire Gote 13, Ichigo alone should be more powerful than them too. So why does Ichibe say Ichigo doesn't stand a chance? Was he lying? Because even if he was, Ichigo himself should know that's BS. And for those of you wondering about my math, Old Man Zangetsu just said Ichigo was only ever able to use the power he couldn't suppress, which he refers to as a fragment. A fucking fragment of Zangetsu's total power. So not only did Ichigo get his full Zangetsu powers, but he now also has Quincy power from Old Man Zangetsu that were just recently awakened due to Quill J's jail. And he ate a bunch of soul food to further increase his own power level. And if that wasn't powerful enough, he should also have a brand new Bankai and should still be able to holify on top of all that. So yeah, Ichigo by default should be a gazillion times more powerful than he's ever been, which should automatically put him above just about everyone else in Bleach. Theoretically, if Ichigo was in his current state when he first met Yhwach, it should be Yhwach who doesn't stand a chance because of how powerful Ichigo is. But then again, the power levels in Bleach can be very, let's just say, confusing. The next scene is of Yhwach giving his Stern Ritter and Soul Dots a really funny speech. Yhwach says the final battle will begin soon and that both the Soul Society and the Soul Reapers will be destroyed. It's funny because the only reason that didn't happen the first time is because Yhwach and the Stern Ritter are literal troglodytes. The Serite and everyone still living in it would have already been destroyed if Yhwach simply took the right actions to make it so. That's all it's ever really been. Not just with Yhwach and the Quincy, but also with Ginjo and Aizen. They all had the strength, abilities, information, and allies. The problem is they're just fucking stupid. They're all morons. The three main villains of Bleach are complete dipshits. Kubo simply can't write competent villains. And I have a theory as to why. In regards to Yhwach, Aizen, and Ginjo, victory for them was too easy. All three of these guys and the people that followed them were way too powerful, with all sorts of crazy abilities. So much so that they had to be stupid. If they weren't, they would win. And of course, I understand that there are those who believe these characters are actually very intelligent and even genius. But in my experience, more often than not, these people think this because they believe having overly complicated and convoluted plans that oftentimes contradicts the character's own goals equals high IQ. And because most of them probably never thought about the antagonist's goals and how they went about reaching them in the first place. But back to the speech. Yhwach tells the Quincy that he has chosen Uryu Ishida, one of Ichigo's best friends and a man he just met, to be his successor. Why? I have no fucking idea.
Why me? Why was I chosen as your successor?
I'm sure if you just give it a little thought, the reason why I'm choosing you as my successor should become completely obvious.
No, Yhwach. It really isn't.
I believe that you already know. You're the one. Out of all the Quincy's throughout history, you are the only one who was ever able to survive the Auswählen, and not by accident. There's a reason you survived that day.
So one of two things is happening here. Either Yhwach is lying about why he really wants Uryu, or he doesn't actually know how his own powers work, because Ryukin, Masaki, Ichigo, Karin, and Yuzu all survived the Auswählen. Masaki only died because there was a hollow in front of her, which means Uryu isn't that special. But even if that wasn't the case, why would you want Uryu to join and be your successor anyway? Is Yhwach literally retarded? Because I'm starting to think he is. This whole thing about Uryu joining the Quincy is just superfluous. It doesn't make any sense, and he's obviously gonna betray Yhwach. Shortly after Uryu joins the Quincy, he drinks a bit of Yhwach's blood and is granted a script like the other Stern Ritter. And this is when I realized Kubo put little to no thought at all in how Yhwach and the Stern Ritter's powers would work in relation to each other, because he essentially created an infinite loop. What I mean by that is, if Yhwach can grant powers to people who consume just a few drops of his blood, then why isn't everyone in his army a Stern Ritter? All the regular foot soldiers should all have special powers. There seems to be dozens, if not hundreds of soldots. So obviously the letters would repeat, but if it's as simple as them drinking a bit of his blood, why aren't there hundreds of Stern Ritter? Can he not make more, or is this just another reflection of his low IQ? Based on the information given, I'm going to assume Yhwach can definitely make more Stern Ritter, but just chooses not to do so. And don't forget either, Quincy can absorb reishi to make themselves stronger, so if Yhwach making more Stern Ritter would have cost him too much of his own power, he could have absorbed Yamamoto, Ichigo, Kenpachi, Haribel, and just about anyone else with an ability called Sclave Rai. It's a power we saw Quilljay use in Hueco Mundo, which is basically the Quincy ability to absorb reishi dialed up to 11. If Yhwach wasn't stupid, he would just absorb Uryu too. It's kind of funny to think about, because what does Bankai plundering even matter if the Stern Ritter can absorb literally anything? People, sand, air, buildings, and even powers. I don't think Kubo realized what he did here. There doesn't even seem to be any defenses to Sclave Rai, other than potentially being much more powerful than the person using it or just breaking their halo. The Stern Ritter are obscenely overpowered. More overpowered than any other group we've seen thus far. They can absorb anything the Soul Reapers can do and then just absorb the Soul Reapers themselves. Now that I think about it, why didn't Yhwach just absorb Aizen and instruct the Stern Ritter to do the same with the Soul Reapers they defeated, since they obviously didn't want to kill them? I can't even decide anymore. Is Yhwach dumb or is Kubo? After Uryu gets his script, Yhwach invades the Soul Society again, and this time they transform the entire Serite in a matter of seconds. Why didn't they do this the first time? LOL, that's why. So here we are in Invasion 2. Over the course of the next 10 episodes, we are subjected to some of the most painfully expository and nonsensical fights we've ever seen in Bleach. Starting with Toshiro and Bazby.
Okay, what the hell is that?
Seeing as how I'm feeling generous, I'll tell you our secret. First, I used my Hueco to create multiple thin layers of ash. Then the captain covered those layers with a very thin layer of ice. Then 3, 2, 1, meow! Finally, I just turned my Hueco back into a sword, et voila! A beautiful millefeuille of ice with vacuum layers.
To compensate, I've been diligently training myself to fight with less ice. It seems I'm able to block flames of your level, but then that really isn't saying very much, is it?
Your sense of enemy and ally has been reversed, making you attack your own side. All thanks to my Bankai. Sakashima Yokoshima Happo Fuseru. What's the matter? Feeling sick or something?
What is this?
Sakanade. It's my Zanpakuto. Everything you see is suddenly reversed. Up is down and left is right. Makes it very difficult to fight.
Kokujo Tengen Myo'o is an armor bankai that is imbued with life. Dangai Joe is its form stripped of armor, exposing only its spiritual pressure and power.
Bankai. Kinshara Butodan.
Impossible! No Zangetsu exists that can manipulate both fire and water at the same time! This has to be some sort of deception!
You're right. My technique is based on deception. I can control music and make it serve me. You can't resist it, can you? The deceptive melody echoing in your ears is captivating your heart, isn't it? And when your heart is captivated by my spell, you will burn.
You froze my thorns, but what of it? I told you before, it cannot be stopped by ice. My fear does not require an open wound to enter its victim. The slightest contact with the skin allows it to dissolve and seep in. Nothing you do can defend against it. Nothing. For every person, there are things that make them feel safe, and things that evoke fear in them. The difference is, when they enter a place of safety, they can't explain why it is they feel safe. They can only offer a vague reason, like, it just does. However, when they enter a place of fear, even the dullest simpleton can provide a clear reason for the fear it evokes in them. It's cold. It's too hot. It's filthy. They can give you an entire list of fears, because while feelings of safety are tied to life, feelings of fear are tied to death. Even those who can't give you reasons to live can readily provide reasons for not wanting to die. And it's not just those creatures that possess feelings. All living things instinctively avoid death. And what is another word for that? Fear. Everything that possesses life lives to avoid fear, trains itself and strengthens itself to avoid fear, and grows up learning all of the ways to avoid fear. As long as you're alive, fear will always have an effect. There is no escaping it.
I know. And that's exactly why your fear won't work on me. You don't get it. It seems to have escaped you that I'm not alive right now.
What are you talking about?
So Deno Shirayuki is not a sword that emits freezing air from its tip. What it is instead is a Zanpakuto that lowers the body temperature of its possessor to below freezing. Everything it touches freezes over. The blade does nothing more than extend the range of its effect.
Don't be ridiculous. If you were to lower your body temperature to below freezing, all of your bodily functions would cease. You wouldn't even be alive.
Exactly. I'm dead right now. You see, by carefully controlling and regulating my reishi, I've gained the ability to temporarily kill my body.
Yeah,
Hey,
that
man,
variety makes life freer.
that
It makes it
makes
open.
no fucking sense to me at all.
All molecular activity within my body has ceased. That means even if your fear did seep into me, it lost all of its effect the moment it touched my body.
Episode 10 is when Ichigo finally comes back down from the Soul King Palace. He's immediately face to face with some Stern Readers, and I actually thought something cool and very satisfying was gonna happen here. You know, like Ichigo running through these guys with his new Zanpakuto like a total Chad, just swiftly and skillfully taking everyone out. Something similar to how he was when he went Bankai against Ginjo. A very serious and no-nonsense kind of vibe. But no. Instead, this asshole just clowns around with the Stern Reader girls and doesn't even seem to want to kill them.
You're gonna have to do better than that! God, you idiot!
I said before that Cour 2 took 2 steps back, and this is one of them. The seriousness of the situation. The Quincy are literally trying to end the world as we know it, and in the process of doing so, they've managed to kill thousands of Soul Reapers, including Ginryusai fucking Yamamoto and his lieutenant. They nearly killed Byakuya and Rukia, which is why Ichigo was so angry when he first appeared in part 1. Then they arrive again for a second invasion to just continue their indiscriminate killing of Soul Reapers. And Ichigo is just acting a fucking fool. I actually hate this. I don't think I've ever seen Ichigo as angry as he was when he first saw the destruction the Quincy caused in part 1. But now here he is stronger than ever with the power to end this war and easily able to kill these murdering bitches, and he just doesn't. Why? Ichigo knows that the Quincy are just gonna kill and destroy more and more until there's nothing left of the Serite. It's the reason why he was in such a hurry from the royal palace to begin with. But once he finally gets here, it's like he completely forgot what he was supposed to be doing. This clown didn't even want to hurt the Stern Reader. You know what? Screw it. I'm cheering for the Quincy's now. I'm tired of your bullshit, Ichigo. And speaking of bullshit, this right here, what I'm about to show you, is max level bullshit. As a matter of fact, it's a flat out war crime.
Leith Reagan.
Nope, your eyes do not deceive you. That's Uryu shooting his regular ass arrows that just cut and pierced Tsushikai Ichigo. Yes, I know Uryu recently got a script from Yhwach, but holy hell, how is that able to compare to what Ichigo currently is now? How can any of these people compare to what Ichigo is now? Somehow Robert, Meninas, and Basby are all able to keep up with and even outspeed Ichigo. I don't even know what's going on anymore. Why the hell does Tsushikai Ichigo need Renji to save him? He even got saved by Chad. Fucking Chad. Who the fuck wrote this? Why would you have Ichigo behave this way? The Stern Ritters actually did more damage to each other than Ichigo did to them. Tsushikai Ichigo somehow performs worse against the Quincy than Fullbring Ichigo did. What the hell are these power levels? I hate this kind of writing so much. For a multitude of reasons, but mainly because it implies that Ichigo is slower than both the person attacking him and the person saving him. It's just pathetic. We did all that training and self-discovery with Ichigo only to have him get bitched by Uryu and some random Stern Ritter. How is this even possible? When Ichigo first sees the Quincy light shooting up to the Soul King Palace, why couldn't he just flash step / Sonido / Hirenkyaku instantly over to it? How can the Stern Ritters keep up with him? If Ichigo didn't want to hurt or kill the Bambis, why did he even draw his swords? And more importantly than all that, why didn't the Bambis think it necessary to use Volstern against Ichigo?
Let's hit him with you-know-what!
Seriously?
Oh, but that always makes me so tired.
Seems a little overkill if you ask me.
They called Kenpachi a monster due to his power and resilience, but Ichigo should be astronomically more powerful than Kenpachi and every other member of the Gotei 13. Can they not sense that? Why were they so casual when dealing with Ichigo? The Quincy King himself was put on high alert by a significantly weaker and significantly slower, beaten down half-dead Ichigo with a fragile Zanpakuto. Make it make sense. Is Tsushikai Ichigo just not as powerful as I thought he was? Because these random bitches are not just able to keep up with Ichigo, but they were also able to overpower him a few times. I don't know what's going on here, and I'm not exactly sure what it is Kubo is trying to tell me, but I absolutely fucking hate it. At one point, Candace gets hit with 2 massive Getsuga Tenshos, and it somehow doesn't kill her. I'm sorry, but if Candace can survive that, she can survive fucking anything. I'm not a power scaler or a versus battle guy, but 2 named Getsuga Tenshos from Tsushikai Ichigo would automatically be in the upper echelon of the most powerful attacks ever used in Bleach. Unless, of course, like I said earlier, Tsushikai Ichigo is nowhere near the power level I think he is. By the way, I couldn't help but notice Ichigo's Fullbring stuff is gone now. Was I actually right about what I said in my Fullbring video? Cause it seems Kubo got rid of that shit. The final 3 episodes of the Cour is all about Yhwach versus the Zero Division. Yhwach has Uryu, Hashwat, Nizol, and his royal guard. Nizol is dealt with pretty quickly and the rest of the Quincy are all trapped in a big tree cage. Now it's right around here I was expecting Yhwach and the Quincy to go crazy. This is the Zero Division after all. I was expecting them all to power up their scripts and activate Volstern, and I was expecting Yhwach to use Yama's Bankai at some point, but none of this happens. What actually happens is much worse. The Zero Division introduces themselves to the Quincy, then Nemaya comes forward to one-shot all 4 members of Yhwach's royal guard. The only Quincy left standing are Yhwach, Uryu, and Hashwat. And you know what Yhwach does? He takes his medallion, throws it out of the cage, and swaps places with it. So, now Uryu and Hashwat by themselves have to fight 4 members of the Zero Division, one of whom just casually killed all 4 members of the Quincy Royal Guard. Basically they're screwed. Or maybe not, because through the power of plot, Nemaya just decides not to kill them. Hashwat activates his script and Nemaya just walks away. He doesn't get very far though because Askin is still alive, and with his script, the death dealing, he kills Nemaya. Or rather he would have killed Nemaya if he would just shut the fuck up. Nemaya, after hearing this very valuable information, drains his own blood and gets it replenished with Tenjiro's hot spring. Then he proceeds to cut Askin down again. I'm a little surprised he didn't just cut his head off to be safe, but oh well. Askin is defeated, and Hashwat and Uryu are pretty easily defeated as well. So now Yhwach is the last Quincy standing. He's going head to head with Ichibe, but things aren't going very well. Ichibe has a very strange Zanpakuto that cuts names in half, and when he cuts Yhwach's name in half, his power also becomes halved. It seemed like I was going to be faced with even more disappointment, but then Yhwach activates Ashwaylen. Ashwaylen takes power and life from the Quincy and the Serite to revive and boost the powers of himself, Hashwat, Uryu, and the Royal Guard. I'm rooting for the Quincy now, so I am glad Yhwach used Ashwaylen, but it's such an inconsistent ability. Why did it shoot straight past Ichigo when he's a full-blown Quincy now? Did Yhwach purposely not target him? Why would it take everyone's powers but not his? And why does Ashwaylen instantly kill some Quincy but only takes powers from others? And I gotta give a quick shout out to my boy Ichibe. As someone who's now siding with the Quincy, I really appreciate you just standing there and doing nothing while Yhwach restores his own power and revives the other Quincy. Also, strangely enough, it seems like Ashwaylen increased the IQ of the Quincy Royal Guard, because they immediately activate Volsterndich once they're revived. Lille, the X-axis, even uses his script and it's really powerful. He's able to shoot through 2 Zanpakutos to put a hole in Nemaya's chest. Kiryu makes another massive tree cage splitting up the Stern Ritter, but it's of no use. The Stern Ritter, now all powered up from Ashwaylen and Volsterndich, easily defeats Squad Zero. And this is worthy of celebration. Squad Zero got their asses handed to them. I will say though, if the Stern Ritter weren't so reckless the first time around, they probably could have beaten Squad Zero without the help of Yhwach. But you know what they say, teamwork makes the dream work. Wait, what are you guys doing? Why'd you bring the barely conscious members of Squad Zero to a center platform? Oh God, don't tell me you guys are about to do something dumb.
The Royal Special Task Force assigned to protect the Soul King ain't gonna let a bunch of Quincy's get the best of them, I'll tell you that. So Squad Zero front and center, up on your feet, everyone! Senjumaru, you're gonna be the one who kills them.
How about no? Lille, shoot them. All of them.
Now watch what happens when Squad Zero gets serious.
Wait, they're killing themselves? Okay, whatever. Just shoot this bitch then. Come on, Lily. Use your script and kill her. Right now. Lily, Gerard, Hashwat, Uryu, Pranita, Askin, anyone. Please, don't let her do whatever it is she's about to do. You have the W, don't throw it away.
Prepare yourselves. Bankai.
Oh, it's just a Bankai. Damn. I gotta be honest, Senjumaru, you really scared the shit out of me for a second. If your trump card is a Bankai, that shouldn't be a problem for my boys here. Between the 6 of them, surely someone has a medallion to try and steal your Bankai, right?
Shida no Rokushiki Ukimono Hata.
Okay, guess not. Well, there goes the Quincy Royal Guard again. Jesus, everyone's so stupid. Including Yhwach. He gets beaten by Ichibe, who uses both Shikai and Bankai against him. And yes, I know Yhwach's eyes are closed or whatever, but he doesn't even use Sanct Zwinger or Sklave Rai. None of them do. They're all so stupid. Yhwach doesn't even use his own Volsterndish. It's really hard for me to be on anyone's side in this show, but for now, I am still rooting for Yhwach solely because I've seen every member of Squad Zero get beaten except Ichibe. And even though it's been years since I've read the manga version of the Blood War, I still remember what Yhwach does next, so I guess I'll be happy in the end. 100%. I stand by everything I said about the Fullbring arc. But now that I'm here at what I think is the halfway point of the Blood War, I really do think it's worse. I think the writing's worse, I think the characters are worse, there's way too much retconning for my liking, and the main antagonist is way dumber than any of the ones before him. The only positives I can honestly come away with is that it all looks nice. The soundtrack is still good, and there are a few fights that on hype and spectacle alone are worth the watch. Yamamoto vs Yhwach being the main example. No other fight or action sequence comes close to that in my opinion. It's the best in part 1 and part 2. Yhwach and his Royal Guard versus the Zero Division was incredibly disappointing. Most of that fight plays out the way it did simply because all the characters involved are brain dead. So far, Yhwach has been the worst and most moronic villain in all of Bleach. And since he's kind of a hot topic, let me talk about Grammy for a sec. I don't have a problem with his character or who he is, but his powers and power level really bothers me. I think the Visionary is the most out of place Stern Ritter ability. And you might say that's the point, that's what makes it interesting, that a kid has such incredible power. But then I would say to you, okay, zoom out. All the way out. Grammy isn't a character in a vacuum. He's a part of a world with dozens of other characters with their own abilities and motivations. And this is my problem with Gremmy's script. Yhwach is willing to kill Quincy simply for losing a battle, and he's also willing to absorb their powers without warning should it benefit him. So why would he allow an unstable kid such as Grammy to keep this insane power? If Yhwach had simply taken Grammy's power for himself, or even just used them sensibly, this whole war would be over. And that's like the second or third time I've said that. He's just so stupid it's frustrating. And if for some reason Yhwach just wanted to let Grammy keep all his power, he should have kept him close like Uryu and Hashwalt. His imagination powers are really dangerous, and I don't think Grammy has the mental fortitude to properly handle it, which is how he basically lost to Kenpachi. Another route Yhwach could have taken with Grammy is he could have put him in the same position as Naizo and the Royal Guard, where they're completely hidden away until Yhwach needs them for the Soul King Palace. But it's too late now. Yhwach completely wasted him. I think the Stern Ritter in general were wasted. Yhwach has a list of people he considers to be quote-unquote special threats, and he also has over 24 Stern Ritters at his disposal, yet none of them was ever tasked with finding and killing these special threats. Not even Yhwach himself seems to care about them. In the first invasion, he said it would take too long to kill Aizen, but in part 2, he makes 0 attempts to deal with Aizen or any of the other special threats. Yhwach might be Kubo's worst written character by far, and he's definitely the worst villain I've seen thus far. He's an awful leader with 0 charisma, 0 personality, and 0 strategic capability. There is nothing interesting about him aside from how stupid he is, and not a single thing he's done thus far has made any sense. This guy legitimately makes Aizen and Ginjo look like intellectual superpowers. No other arc in Bleach has bothered me as much as the Blood War. It genuinely angers me the more I think about it, and I don't believe the second half will be any better either. At this point, I'm mostly just curious about how bad things will get before it all ends. Anyway, I'm going on vacation now.